Hi, Devan.
Hello, Max, right?
Yes. So, this is Devan Byrne. I found you through your podcast on the Tao Te Ching, the
Yeah.
Tao Te Ching and What Would Water Do podcast. Um, can you can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So, when you ask such a thing, a little bit about myself, I just get this flood of information. I'm like, oh, I got this and that and that. I got tons of stuff I can say. But of course, so yeah, I go by Reverend Devan Jesse Byrne, and I have been, I'm a modern mystic. I've always been into spirituality. And the Tao Te Ching was something that I started focusing on a few years ago, where I would take one specific interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, and I started to somewhat channel and communicate with Lao Tzu, and having the interpretation more so done in my terminology and in my understanding. Um, yeah, so from my experience from outside of the physical experience.
So when you say interpretation, do you mean translation?
Well, not language translation, but yes, I do mean translation. As far as because we have so many different cultures and
Hmm.
takes on and society and way we were raised and what terminology we use, even as I somewhat use Christian terminology as it was
Yes.
something I was raised in. It's more so the universal spirit and the information in which divine purpose is offering all the
Hmm.
time. And Lao Tzu was in touch with this and attempting to teach it. And I do feel that the original translation was from Lao Tzu to his predecessors that tried to explain and tried to write it down.
Yes.
And so from that point, it was already distorted.
Yes.
And that's where the most of the misinterpretation came from. And then the translation from ancient Mandarin to the several different languages into English has had its own different interpretations as well, and different variations. So I just took the interpretation that I had access to, and I just went straight to Lao Tzu
Right.
and was attempting to understand it in that way. And it was so that's why most people define Tao as the way, and
Hmm.
that's more so a direct translation from the ancient Mandarin.
Yes.
And for me, it was divine purpose, and that as far as using my cultural understanding, it came to me, and that's where the word kind of fell out of place.
Hmm.
And so it's actually the book on divine purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way people, different people translate it in. So, would you say it's fair to say that you kind of, um, well, so the way I see it, and it's been a remarkable experience to me reading the Tao Te Ching. I actually just read it. I've got a um, I've got a
Very nice.
translation. Sorry.
Got the pocketbook, the,
No,
the
I've
little
got a
one.
trans. There's a lot of different ones. The one I've got is by Stephen Addis and Stanley Lombardo. So, but anyway, there
Yeah,
seems to be this, there's the book, but the book describes something that's, the experience that's,
yeah,
the book is just a description of the experience.
exactly.
And yeah, and the way you talk about it, you know, in your podcast, you often say that, the experience is um, not to be described, like the way
Yeah,
you describe it is even saying that the discrete this that the experience cannot be described does not do justice to describing the experience.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I'm
And that's
going with it.
something I believe it's in the first verse of
Hmm.
the Tao Te Ching, where the most common translation usually said is the name that cannot be named is not the eternal name.
Yes.
And you know, I don't have the exact or my translation in front of me, but it pretty much is about that undefinable, undescribable reality outside of, say, construct of form, in which is definition. So we're talking divine purpose outside of physicality. It can't be defined because then it's physical purpose.
Yes.
And it's not divine purpose. And so there is a divine purpose to physical purpose, but it can't be described, it can't be understood in physical construct because it has the separation aspects. Like even just saying divine purpose, you know, I'm not saying hot dog, you know, I'm not saying fire hydrant. This is separation of it. And yet hot dog, fire hydrant, and myself in the book in physicality has the same divine purpose. So it's pretty intense.
So, you know, language itself is in a sense divisive, and but this purpose is about unity. Would you say that's correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of variations, and Tao Te Ching is just one way of interpretation and my expression of it. And I'm still making these. I'm still interpreting all of these as well. And I've been building a lot of courses and everything lately. So it's kind of all coming in different ways, but it is about coming to the same original source of reality. So that is unity. And it's an absolute fact of experience.
Do you come from a Christian tradition of, you know, I notice you use in your podcast, you use Christian terminology sometimes, like you use the term Christ consciousness a few times.
Yes.
Could you explain that term? What do you mean by Christ consciousness?
So it is mostly a term referring to that unity. And Christ consciousness is the sense of, even if I use mathematical understanding of dimensions, it is the first dimension of what we know as the third and fourth dimensions of our experience.
Right.
So we all derive from that. And it is what contains, say, the divine purpose originally. It is the existence in which came into play of infinite possibilities, and it's the one that developed all existence.
Is there
Christ,
is there something more basic? Is there a zeroth dimension?
Yeah, so there is a zeroth dimension. That's what I refer to as God. So using those Christian terminology, it's not required, but it is in every single religion, the Gnostic truth of it, as you get more into it. But I'm mostly coming from I had a multidimensional death experience when I was actually attempting to transcend the world before this book came about. And so I was attempting, I call it forgiving, using Christian terminology, meditating and letting go of everything, and completely surrendering all definition of shape and construct of the world. And so I had a pretty massive experience from that. And that's where, in the same place, I'm coming from the same truth as the Tao Te Ching. I also have another podcast / book, the Diamond Sutra, which someone asked me about Gautama the Buddha's, the Diamond Sutra. And instead of trying to figure it out, instead of trying to read about it, I just decided to go straight to the source. And I came up with 7 chapters in that as well. It just comes pouring out.
So how do you do that? Do you just read the book and then you let the experience come to you? Or do you meditate?
Yes.
Do you do anything?
No, as far as where I'm at right now, it is just get a reference point of the knowledge and information, like reading the verse in Tao Te Ching, and then pretty much just allowing it to interpret through me. Like, what does this mean?
Right.
And
so it just comes to you.
Yeah, but I can't say everybody can do that. No, because it's also with the practice of being beyond myself. So I'm not being Devan at the time. And so even though just like I'm using Devan's mouth to talk and using it to speak, it uses the same terminology Devan's used to and everything and all this stuff, but it's still everybody has that source. We want to come from the instead of,
Yeah,
say, the past. Devan's past does not know this information.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like when ideas come to you. It, Joe Rogan sometimes says that,
uh,
ideas come to you.
yeah,
You don't invent them, they just come to you. Like these like
yeah,
little alien beings that just come to you, and you kind of have to catch them, and
yeah,
they're just so fleeting and light.
yeah. It's
Um,
good.
so it's kind of like that. But you're saying not everyone can do that. So
Well,
what?
I'm saying not everybody can do that from the vantage point in which they see themselves right now, but
Right,
they can be trained. I call it eternal or cosmic knowledge, and it is in that Christ consciousness. And so we all have that within us, like going into the depth of ourselves, but we're so distracted by this physical construct and physical world that if we're not meditating and we're not practicing in that way to actually get to it, then we can't do it. Yeah. But we all have the ability to do it. Yes.
so how do you get there? Just lots of meditation?
Essentially, and I teach courses on it. I'm actually, so that it really is uh, a lot of meditation. I'm teaching meditation in all of my courses, but different from different vantage points and different
Hmm.
uh, beliefs and ideas that people have coming from different directions. But it really is, it comes down to meditation. If you're not meditating, it's not going to happen unless you have some miraculous experience or death experience. But if you actually want to see beyond yourself, you have to stop insisting that you're going to be yourself. Like you have to stop
Right,
insisting, and first you have to figure out which part is, say, your personality, and which is just a natural, innate instinct that is here.
right,
Like what is here before your personality. And so, yes, meditation and what I call forgiveness is a lot more than what most people think of as forgiveness, as just a pardon of someone's sins against you, or the non-judgment, where it's not just about not judging someone as ugly and fat, but it's more so about not knowing the world anymore.
right.
Yeah,
So it's like this destruction of any knowledge. It's just like pure experience.
yeah. I
But
wouldn't
that's
say
what you call.
did you say destruction
Yeah,
or
yeah.
deconstruction?
Well,
I'd say,
both.
yeah, like I wouldn't say that it's like when you say uh, destruction, it sounds like it's not going to be there anymore, and it's still
Right,
there. So it's always available. And every I can be as much Devon as I could be any day before meditating. But as to deconstruct in that moment of meditation, and to be able to look in your mind and recognize what thoughts are not real and what thoughts are not, and what going down to the depths of your being. I would say deconstruction, as far as where it's still available. Of course, it's another matter of just using terms and words, which is
right.
silly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, we kind of have to.
yeah, yeah,
And until we figure out a better way to communicate, we kind of have to.
yeah.
I mean, I guess from your perspective, you would say that, you know, there is no you and me. There is just
Yeah.
the the, the
There-
unity.
There's both. There's both the unity and you and me.
Yeah,
It's, it's kind of all
just kind of how
all
we
everywhere.
experience it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, are you familiar with Jordan Peterson's work?
No. So I don't really read anything
Yeah,
at all.
I know what you mean.
As
Yeah,
it's-
it just,
and
yeah,
yeah,
just
even
comes
when
to
I
you.
read it, I still go and interpret it myself, and go into that. So no, I don't, but I would love to hear your take on what
So
you get from it.
he would study different religions and different cultures across,
Yeah,
across history, and he came up with this model of there's basically two sides. There's chaos and order, and it's been so remarkable, like listening to you and listening to other people, and also reading books. Reading the Tao Te
yeah,
Ching, reading, even the Bible. You can see those elements that he described, play out. Like when you speak about like the unity, the primal experience, whatever you want to call it, that's the chaos part. That's just you
Okay.
know, I don't know if that's the best word to describe it, but it's basically by chaos. I mean, there's no structure, there's no,
Yeah.
there's
It's
no
random.
self.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
just this pure experience, and then order is, um, order is you and me and language and rules that we have,
Yeah.
rules in the society, and then as an individual progresses or as a society progresses, they kind of have to move between chaos and order. So order is, like your habits. You get up and you go for a walk, you go for a run, you dress up, you have a shower. These are
Yeah.
all kind of like rules you have or how you communicate, but they're also restrictive,
Yeah.
because there's this sense of self and, um,
Yeah. It's
these rules. And then chaos, you have to update your rules, and to update your rules you kind of have to go to that place of, um, you know the experience and just let it come to you.
yeah.
So that's people like you who have access to this. But
Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
everyone to a degree, just everyone, like artists, you know
Yeah.
anyone who gets ideas.
Yeah.
um
Creativity. I mean, literally is coming from that source.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah.
Which brings up a course series I'm doing in a couple months. I'm doing an art course series, and actually divine inspiring, uh, designing a whole tarot card set, mostly because
Okay.
it's like just something to design. But yeah, using creativity in the art fashion, pretty
how
excited
how
about.
does how does tarot work? I've never used tarot cards.
Well, I can't say I'm a profession at the arrangement of what most people practice tarot cards, but it's more like just recognizing that there is a reason
hmm
to everything. And so, as you might pull out cards, it's more so in association to the person. There is a reason and a sense of communication that these cards are coming up
right.
into play. So you can use anything. It doesn't have to be um, cards or anything like that. But it was always something, say in the old religion, that was a practice of the energy. Like we have frequencies and reasons
hmm
to everything, as you're talking about, like with order. And so it's more so when we don't understand, we can find understanding in that. Yeah.
um yeah. When skeptics talk about tarot, they often just, like there's a lot of people who, the scientists will typically dismiss it as,
Of course.
yeah. But, what they will say is the way it works is the person will pick up subtle cues from the person they're talking to.
Sure.
But, in a way, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's just,
energy is even
yeah.
more subtle than any sort of cues that, that yeah, of course, if someone's trying to do psychic interpretations of somebody, yes, there a lot of people do different variations, and some would even claim to be complete frauds,
hmm
but they are still doing it. They're still
right.
doing the same thing,
There's
and so
still
even
tapping into that source.
yeah, like yeah, exactly. Like you can not believe your own ability and believe you're a fraud. Yes, but if you recognize that you are actually tapping into this, say this cosmic knowledge, and then you
hmm
have that trust of it, yeah, Devin feels like he's making up crap all the time. Uh, I believe and I put faith into it. The fact that I'm coming up with something that actually makes sense. I'm coming, it's not just complete bibble blabbler. It's not random in that sense. It has some structure and order to it as well.
So how easy is it for you to go into that place? Like, can could you just do it like in any moment?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm not in that place now, and so it's a little tricky because it depends on the divine purpose of what, say, even the situation or what the person I'm working with is looking for, and the communication that's happening. And so usually when people ask about something, they more so want the lesson from what they're asking about and not
Hmm.
actually what they think they want from it. And
Yes.
so I'm more about the lesson than I am about the actual information. So I would more so help someone to discover it themselves than to actually give it straight off to them. I'm more about teaching a man to fish instead of giving him a fish.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by discover yourself? So obviously, like you think everything has a purpose. So
Yeah.
would you say
Oh,
I have a purpose?
oh yeah, absolutely. You would not exist if you didn't have a purpose.
How
You
so?
literally would not be here. So, yes, like my first course series this year I have 7 course series, which each have 7 courses within them. So there's
Uh-huh.
50 courses, because I also have a couple other random ones this year that I'm developing. And the first one was evoking spirit. And a
Right.
big part of that is that I don't want to tell somebody what the spiritual universe is. I do
Hmm.
explain a lot of it, but I want the evidence. I want people to apply the scientific method in any way possible to actually discover it themselves. It's more about leading someone to it instead of just, oh yeah, this, mysticism, transparency, illumination, souls, blah blah blah. You can talk about it all day. People have done that for
Yeah.
eons, right? We have enough of that, right?
Also,
We
it's
want to
difficult to
actually,
talk about
yeah, exactly, yeah,
in a way
uh,
that makes sense to people.
yeah, and
They just
because
have
I
to
mean,
experience it for themselves.
like we make it into shape and form, so like ghosts, we make it
Right.
into shape again. Oh, their bodies floating around, and then it's not anything like that. um, so it's more about just, and that's why I'm doing the courses that I'm doing, is so that I can just, in any direction that's inspiring, assist people to understand and come to it through the personal experience.
So when a person comes to your course, what work? Well, first of all, how long does it take? Like your
uh,
typical course?
to discover this, or
Maybe
the
like a
course itself?
yeah, maybe like a beginner one, like a simple one.
So they're all a little different, but
Hmm.
there are 7 sections in each course, and therefore each course has 7 meditations in each of those sections, and there's 6 discussions. So there's 7 parts to every 7 sections, all
Hmm.
seven, 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 all over the place. And so
Is
roughly,
that a coincidence, or is there a significance to the number seven?
it's kind of divine, but it's more so because it's about focusing on each frequency, and that it's kind of, what most people call the chakras, uh,
Right.
and the rainbow has 7 colors.
Hmm.
It is a specific touching base on every subject in this dimension.
Right.
So as this dimension has 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 notes in an octave, it is referencing to the fact that this is about discovering every last bit of information in that particular subject in order to
What
move to the
about
next octave.
11? Is there anything special about the number 11?
Well, I mean, 11, it's good. I would say it's more
And
so about 12 and
the reason
13.
I'm bringing that up is because, in string theory, they say that the physical world has 11 dimensions. So I was wondering if there's a, you know, if that's just a coincidence, or if there anything special about the number 11.
Well, just like how I was talking about the zeroth dimension, and I would say there's 10 dimensions, but in fact,
Right.
yes, there is 11 because there's the zeroth dimension.
Oh,
But
okay.
so as far as the numbers, of course, fall short. But to explain it more, the original point of indeterminate size is what is the eternal aspect of God. It's the same thing as the 10th dimension, but it's the difference between the beginning of it and the end of it. So God being the beginning and the end. So it's not so much about the number,
Hmm.
really, but it's more so about the 333. So there's actually, after the first dimension, the second, third, and fourth dimension, and then the fifth, sixth, and seventh dimension, and the eighth, ninth, and 10th dimension.
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually 3 9.
Right. Right. So it's 333.
Yeah.
And
So
where's
it's
the other
so
two?
it, this is a whole nother uh, definitely experience of knowledge. But it's always mind, body, spirit, mind, or mind, spirit, body, in that order. So you got the consciousness, which is mind. That's what Christ consciousness I refer to as the first dimension. Then the second dimension is a holographic representation of the universe. This is energy. So getting into string theory and everything. So the second dimension is energy. Then the third dimension is physical construct. The fourth dimension is the belief in an individual consciousness or mind,
Hmm.
and that is obsessed with physicality. So it believes in time, and it has
Right.
this whole construct of beginning and end and everything. And the fifth dimension is another spiritual dimension. Sixth being a physical, seventh being mind again, eighth being spiritual, ninth being physical, and 10th being consciousness again.
Right. Right. Right.
So it's a little tricky because you're also trying to reference to something about dimensions with numbers that
Yeah.
only the fourth dimension is so obsessed with. The ego mind personality is obsessed with these numbers. Like even to say the zeroth dimension and the 10th dimension are the exact same thing, which means there's only 10 dimensions. But really, the zeroth dimension is all 10 dimensions, all of them. So there's no dimensions. So it all depends on which reference point you're actually talking about and looking at. So from the fourth dimension, this thing we call ego personality time,
Yeah.
it's imprisoned into a body. So it looks into this linear aspect of
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah. That's just
that's where you're looking at the
time.
numbers. In most of other dimensions, you won't even think of it as numbers.
Well,
So it's
that,
tricky.
yeah, that's a bit heavy to me. I
Yeah.
mean, like I can, like I can kind of imagine going into the fifth, but then, you're saying there's even more. Like, well, I
Yeah,
mean,
don't talk about it too much because I do lose people on it. But I am definitely capable of talking about all of them.
can you?
Well, I mean,
Could you
yes,
describe them?
but you're also asking, descriptions to confine it. Just like yes, the fifth dimension,
Yeah.
the biggest aspect of the fifth dimension is the difference between one mind and what I would refer to as the mind of the Holy Spirit. So this is
Hmm.
the holy spiritual universe. That everything in energy will will share one mind. That means all of us will be sharing mind. So we'll be more telepathic. But we're also getting
And
into
there's no
alternate.
ego.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
ego is literally what imprisons us into a physical construct. So
Right.
that is, and the barrier to the fourth dimension to the fifth is to accept that consciousness of Christ again, the authority in which developed everything.
Right.
So to come back to that divine purpose of all that is. So the fifth dimension is also gets into alternate timelines of our reality, and and
Right.
so the sixth dimension is called in my Christian terminology the resurrection, and so it's actually where physical laws are completely different than we have now, but it is a physical construct.
Okay.
So in other words, in one of these timelines, you're alive always, but in all of them, you also die in different ways. So you can jump from different timelines to rise again.
Wait, so is the fifth dimension, so is the fifth dimension spiritual and the sixth is physical?
Yes, and the
Okay.
seventh is consciousness.
Right.
So you're always aware of three at a time, and you actually progress in a fashion where you drop the
Oh,
last one
okay.
and you add the next one. So we had the consciousness of Christ when we were developing the world. So that was the first, second, and third. And then when we
Right.
went into fourth dimension, we dropped the first. And so we became unaware of the original
Right.
consciousness and became aware of physical, independent consciousness instead. And so now we would drop the second dimensional perspective, which we call emotions, and then we'll go into the fifth dimensional perspective of energy, which is hard to explain.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is
Yeah,
it is hard to understand,
yeah, it's
but
intense.
it well, I mean,
And it's
it's
not the Tao Te Ching, that's sure.
It's not.
Well, I mean, it's not that it's not, but it's not. Tao Te Ching doesn't focus on it.
So is there something even more, like profound than the Tao Te? I thought the Tao Te Ching was supposed to be like the ultimate explanation. Well, like to the extent that you can even explain it
It
in words.
Yeah, it is very, very helpful. So I do use what brought me to my death experience was a practice called A Course in Miracles,
Right.
and it's not in there either. I'm the dimensions I'm coming from. I'm literally coming from the creation consciousness of all that is. So I can't tell you where it's written or anything, but I do hope to collaborate with someone to develop a book about it someday. But I'm not a book writer myself.
About the Course of Miracles.
Well, about the dimensions more so.
Right. Okay.
So, A Course in Miracles is about forgiveness and discovering that Christ consciousness.
Okay. Um, so, okay, how would you can you describe it? Can we talk about the Course of Miracles for a second?
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
describe what it is? I can't it yeah, I don't want to say
Yeah,
I know what it is. I don't know what it is,
sure.
but
So
just
it's
go into
unique. A
it.
lot of people come in with different connotations about it because it does prominently use Christian terminology, and so it gets associated with different religions and everything. And it's not, and it's not meant to be. So it does use Christ and God and masculine pronouns like he and everything, but it also explains that this is as meaningless and just for description,
Right.
and so it's more so about comprehending that.
When
So
was it written, the Course of
it
Miracles?
was coming. It came to a lady called Helen Schuckman, and she started having, aside from the huge story, but she started having it come word for word through her,
Mm,
and she was taking shorthand notes the entire book, and it came out to be bigger than the Bible. And so there's two parts: there's a text and the workbook and the manual for teachers, which is three parts.
right.
But the workbook has 365 lessons that help you to figure out your mind and to discover this.
Right.
Yeah.
How long
So
are
I
these lessons?
that's one thing. I teach a course. One of those other courses I was talking about. I do teach developing right now the Course in Miracles experience, which is going through the lessons intended for the first time for beginners, but it's a little extreme already. Um, as far as getting to it, so the lesson is pretty. I mean, it's pretty simple as far as when you get into the actual lesson of the course.
Yeah.
And I'm also providing and
Simple
giving
but
the
not easy.
PDF out. Yeah, they're a few paragraphs. I think the longest one is a page or two, and it's
Right.
more like just trying to help you to understand it, and then it's more about how you apply it throughout
Yeah,
the day.
but what do you have to do? Do you have to like change your perspective, or do you have to do physical exercises
Well,
or meditation?
it's more about your perspective entirely, but you don't have to. You just simply do it as directed.
Right.
And sometimes it does have you kind of sit and meditate and stuff. But like lesson one, for an example, is nothing I see in this room means anything. And that in that reference, you just look around and kind of just rest on different images, different things you see, and
Yeah.
just suggest to yourself that this does not mean anything.
Right.
And so a lot of the lessons are about breaking down your ego perspective so that you
Yeah.
can start to see beyond it.
So it's kind of like hypnosis in a way.
I mean, it does use a sense of neuro-linguistic programming, but it's not um,
Well,
intended in that fashion.
what I mean is you kind of just sit down and you kind of suggest to yourself, nothing in this room matters, and you just kind of think about that, but like not in a verbal way. You just kind of like, let it,
Yeah,
let it,
yeah.
let it affect you, and like let it, you
To
know,
me, to me, the process is ultimately what you discover through meditation,
yeah,
but it's literally like steps that you're figuring out. That like lesson 11 is one of my favorite ones where it's about just watch your thoughts, just watch them pass by like a oddly procession passing by. And
yeah,
I think of it like clowns and parades, and just instead of engaging with them and taking up the temptation, as it's referred, Christian terminology again, to use those thoughts. Instead, just let them pass by. Just let them pass by, and it's pretty amazing.
Right. So that's the first lesson. So that's
But
basically mindfulness meditation.
yeah, well, that's the 11th
Right.
meditation or
Okay.
11th one. So with my course, the Course in Miracles experience, I'm discussing a little bit for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more about each lesson. So it's pretty simple. So you can do the lesson, and then I help and reiterate and explain it a little bit.
Okay. Does it get more complicated from there, or because like that, watch your thoughts. I can deal with that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
no, it doesn't get harder than that. It depends on how diligent you are.
Right.
If
Just
you
takes
want,
practice and
it's
discipline.
more about, like, it doesn't matter how long you meditate, for an example.
Right.
It's more about getting to the point in which you're attempting to achieve in that meditation. So if you
Okay.
can achieve that point of the meditation very rapidly, then you don't need to do it
Yeah.
much longer. And it's what I mean, any meditation. So it's, as far as the lessons of A Course in Miracles, it's not insisting that you have to know what you're discovering. You don't
Right.
have to believe it. Even in the in introduction of it, it's like you don't have to know what it's talking about. You don't have to understand it. Just simply apply it, and you will find that you discover
Right.
it.
But
Yeah.
but you do have to experience it. So what happens if a person does these exercises and just nothing happens? Is that
Well, no matter what, you're always going to find a greater sense of peace of your mind. You might not come to the total knowledge of the universe, but no, undeniably, everybody that has done it has discovered more peace in their life and more happiness.
right? That's what meditation gave me. I've been
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
meditation every
Yeah,
day for maybe 3 years now, and it just,
beautiful.
yeah, it brought me to a completely different state. It just like I just the way I always describe it to people is, sometimes when you have an argument with someone and you say something and then you realize you said it after the fact.
Yeah,
So, but ever since I trained myself in
okay.
meditation, um, I catch myself, I'm having an argument and I just I can feel that I'm about to say something that I'm going to regret,
Yeah,
and I'm aware of it, and then I just don't do it, right?
yeah, yeah. You
So
have more choice. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it feels like you have more choice. Like
yeah.
you can just be aware.
And that's a
And
very helpful, practical way of understanding it too. It's like, with that, I would say, you get, as you get more and more aware, even
uh-huh,
beyond just yourself, you get more and more choice.
right.
Yeah,
So is there, so okay. So you get more and more choice and then kind of move beyond the physical.
yeah, yeah. In a way, people really enjoy that thing called law of attraction. You've heard of that, right?
Uh, Law of
No.
attraction. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
have.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
the law of attraction is essentially what, say, as you come into more awareness, you
yeah,
get more choice about what's in your life.
yeah,
And so you learn to direct your thoughts into thinking about, and a lot of Course in Miracles really is about that, is think about what you want. Don't think about what you don't want.
right.
And you're naturally start getting it more. So that making it very simple to understand. As you become more aware of your emotions and you focus on what you want, you're making that choice of, I don't want to, ruin my friendship here.
Right.
Instead, I have the choice to stop. And there's some very profound lessons, like, I could see peace instead of this is one of them that comes to mind. And that's really what you're doing. You're learning how, oh, I could choose peace instead of this argument, because I value this, say, relationship over the being heard, and
Yeah.
insisting that I'm right and all this stuff, or that there are beep 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 beep. Yeah,
Just choosing the stuff that matters.
yeah,
You know, uh, we live in such a reductionist society. When what I mean by that is, like, a lot of people I already know a lot of people listening to this conversation are gonna think I went crazy.
Yeah, they're like, huh, right? Who are you talking to?
Yeah, so I can already see a lot of people will think that. Um, but we live in it's again like Joe Rogan said, you know, in today's culture, if you cannot measure something, then it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like if you cannot put God in a box and say, it's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, then it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Whereas, in a way, um, there is, like people always insist on evidence.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah, I like that word because as I was mentioning about the courses, it's like, yes, I can't prove it to you outside. I can't put it in a box, but I develop my courses to prove it to you within yourself.
yeah,
And just like all of these religious practices and the Tao Te Ching and meditation, you're getting the proof inside so that you know the proof. You have the evidence.
yeah,
But yeah, you can't share it in a box with anybody else, but you can help and share them to understand and then to come to it as well. But no, if you're not going to learn how to do it yourself, you're not going to understand it. It's true.
right. So you've been studying spirituality for pretty much all your life.
In one way or another, yes.
Yeah. And when would you say you experienced this death experience?
December 10th, 2012.
Right. So it was a specific day.
Yes.
And
As far
then,
as in the linear time
right.
perspective, yes.
And then can you like come back to that experience anytime you want? Or was it just,
Yeah, it's always here. Like the experience is always here because it's more like in that awareness. Like all
yeah,
the dimensions are here right now. That's the
I
thing about a
know.
dimension is that it's just a perspective of the same place.
I know,
And
but
so,
what I'm saying is you gave a specific date. I know that's just like human
yeah.
understanding of time, but you gave a specific date. So was it like before that date, you were practicing towards it, and then after that date, you're done? You can just basically move to that state whenever you want. Just
Um, yeah, in a way, if I understand what you're saying. So before, I was trying to get to it and to
right,
experience it, trying to get out of, say, the world, transcend the world. And now, ever since now, I'm kind of out and trying to be in it. So I'm actually coming from the other direction. So now
right,
I'm deliberately being Devin. Like if I
right,
stop choosing to be Devin, this whole thing's over.
right.
Yeah. So it's using words. It's a little harder to explain.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I don't
Eh,
know what you mean,
You
but
think you're
I
crazy. It's
I don't think neither of us is crazy, but I do think
yeah,
some people will think that because the previous episodes were mainly about technology, so a lot of people watching this are like
yeah.
very down to earth software engineers, this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um,
It's an
very
interesting ensemble that you're going to be having as far as having technology and
yeah.
spirituality
Oh,
combined.
I mean, this is all about just inviting people that they think are interesting, just people who have
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
things to say, and just I try to be good at listening, so I kind of try to capitalize on that. I try to be a good listener. It's kind of difficult to find a place where you can just talk,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's usually the other person who wants to do the talking. So it's difficult to find a place where you can just talk, and that's what I'm trying to provide.
That's good.
Um,
Yeah.
but okay, so how long did it take you? So you said 2017, did you say that
No,
you
2012. It was the end of the world.
2012,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, right,
It
of
was
course.
12, 10, 12.
Was it
It was the end of the
coinc
world for me. Yeah.
was it coincidental, or do you think there's
I
something
don't
to it?
think so.
Right,
Yeah. I think it's all about the plan.
right,
Um, I mean, I've had tons of experiences. I mean, even trained as a Reiki master at the age of 19 and massage therapy as well as just spirituality. I mean, I was talking to what I would refer to as God at the age of 12.
Right.
So I was having some pretty profound experiences already, but I was
Right.
still lost and confused. And
Did you
now
did you have to train for that, or were you just naturally gifted?
uh, it's debatable. I don't exactly know if it's a natural thing for me or not, but I've always been focused my entire life on. So as I was raised in the Mormon church, I use that to try and understand it. I do feel like I was trained in meditation at the age of 12 by the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit.
Right.
So I was actually, in that sense, learning how to meditate. And because I was so obsessed, like with my crush at the time, it was like using the symbols of my mind. Okay, just it doesn't matter what you're chanting, just focus on her, chant her name, and I
Why
learned.
were we doing that? Like,
That's the
w-
real
w-
question. I thought, why do I think I was doing it, or why
yeah.
was the spirit guiding me to do
Why do you, well, both. Why do you, well, let's start with why
that?
did you think you were doing that? Maybe let's start with
Well,
that.
I thought, oh, maybe that could get her to like me. I
Okay.
didn't realize I was training. I was literally, I would lay down, I would stay perfectly still, and I would just like chant her
Right.
name over and over again and focus on her image, focus, focus.
Right.
And I realized I was using her name and her picture in my mind to learn how to
And,
meditate.
and you didn't read that anywhere. It's you just came up with that yourself.
Not that I know of.
Right.
I mean, I would occasionally listen to like Coast to Coast FM or AM, and there was a lot of weird stuff on there talking about all sorts of things. So I'm sure I've learned in
Yeah.
there somewhere.
I wish I knew what you were talking about.
Oh,
I've
Art Bell, he doesn't.
I've only been to America once. I
Uh,
loved it though. Um, I
they
think
talk
it's a great
about all
country.
sorts of things. It's like they have people on talking about aliens and out of body experiences and flat Earth and all this stuff. I haven't listened to it in years, but yeah, it's
A
great
lot
stuff.
of alien experiences, a lot of UFO experiences in Arizona and Nevada.
The Area 51, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff.
That's where they
Uh,
are
when
over.
so I was in Sedona, Arizona, when I had
Mm,
my death experience, and the woman I was traveling with, she was running and experienced an like she didn't realize that there was so much light, and she was at night, right? There was a little bit
mm.
more light, and she looks up and there was an orb above her head, and then it goes flying into the mountain in that we climb. Is like when inside Bell Rock, that's
Yeah.
the mountain, and she was like blown away, and she comes running back. She's like, "I saw an alien!" And of course, it was just like a glowing orb to her. She couldn't understand it.
A lot of people told me that, and it's so interesting because it seems to be concentrated in that area, like
Yeah,
Nevada, Arizona, the just kind of that area of the U.S. Like there's very few UFO sightings in Europe. Just seems to
yeah,
be, and it's not even like the east coast of the U.S. It's always that area.
yeah. There's something about desert that does vibrate differently as well, but
Right.
it's mostly, yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not huge into the alien thing and the stories and everything, but I undeniably know that there is a lot more going on than we
Oh
play
yeah.
off.
I mean, they're fun to listen to.
Yeah,
Like whether you think they're, I mean, you probably have a
it's true.
completely different perspective on it just because of your perspective. But whether you think they're, um, I don't think they're from a different planet, but there's definitely the
Yeah,
experiences. And then like what are they? You could say, they're just, could be some strange things we don't know, just like some weather
yeah,
phenomena, or it could be something
yeah.
more
There's all
mysterious.
sorts. Yeah. So I actually, because I wanted to somewhat confine or define, and I into this developing a religion,
Right.
and it's
So
not
when was that? How old were you when that happened?
developing the religion. Well,
Yeah.
uh, doing it right now. And as far
So
as when it
what was it
started, only a
after? Was it after your death experience?
oh yeah, yeah. So it
Right.
was only a couple of years ago that I got official on it. So I pretty much say if it must be defined, if it must be named, because I don't really believe in naming it.
Yeah.
It's referred to as undefinable and expansive, and
Fair
so
enough.
it's kind of just taking, what would the religion of the universe be of all that is.
Yeah.
And so within the articles of belief, still working on some of them as well. Uh, One of them, like the first ones, we believe in God. That's paraphrasing because it gets a lot more explanation on there, and that's another podcast as well. Um, there's another one that we believe in atheism, as well as we believe in all religious beliefs. Number
Hmm.
9 is probably my favorite. That it's more about just like think about the universe. Does the universe have the belief of every religion in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's in there somewhere.
Okay.
And
You
so,
said something interesting there. You said you believe in atheism. Can you
yeah.
explain that a little
So it's just
bit?
like, it's more so about physical form. Like physical form is literally the
Right.
definition of having no God. And
Yes.
so, in that sense of, yes, believing in shape and form and construct physicality, I would embrace the arms of an atheist as much as I would of anybody else. So it's not so much of that in the sense of belief, because how can I believe in what seems like a contradictory term of saying I believe in God and I'm an atheist, and just say that
Right.
together in the same sentence like I just did. Uh, you think
Well,
you're crazy now? Now I'm absolutely. It's
no,
like
I can work with that. Like it seems that life is about contradictions quite a lot. Like I know you talk about
yeah,
contradictions a lot in your work, and the Tao Te Ching especially is a lot
yeah,
like that. Like
paradox. Yeah,
left, right, yeah, up,
yeah,
down, chaos, order, everything,
yeah.
all these opposites. Um,
So it's most so referring to the dimensions. So in some dimensions, yes, God would be, say, not evident, and so it would be there's no God. But
yeah,
in other dimensions, in the same place, there's God.
yes,
So it's yes, I believe in God and no God and all variations of deities of God. So
right.
it's all in there. Everything is within the 10 dimensions, or 11, same thing.
No, I can,
That's in
you
there too.
know, I, I cannot say I understand it, but
Yeah,
um, you know, well, the way I visualize it is just like different perspectives. Like I can
yeah,
kind of shift from one perspective to another, and it's kind of like your world changes when you do that. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say your universe changes, like alternate universes. You're actually
exactly.
choosing which. So when you're choosing a religion and you're choosing what, if you're going to be worshiping a deity or be the deity, you're literally choosing the alternate reality in which that is true.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just come back real quick to so how old were you when you had your death experience?
So I, 28,
28.
26, 28,
28.
somewhere around there.
Okay. And okay, so you had been studying spirituality for all your life. So, but the actual experience came about as the result of training in the Course of Miracles
And meditation. Yeah.
and meditation, right?
So Course in Miracles doesn't directly enforce and suggest meditation in that way, but it does have several practices that are about
Yeah.
meditation. So I also, while I was traveling, I was going around to these centers that teach Vipassana meditation, which is from the Buddha. And so I was practicing that as well. But to me, they were hand in hand. One was more about focusing on the body, and the other one was more focusing on the mind. But it's doing the same
Yeah.
thing. Don't react and see past it. And that's really the same thing.
So how long did it take you from when you started practicing the Course of Miracles? to when you had your death experience?
So I believe I started the first time of A Course in Miracles in 2006
Right.
to
So 6 years.
2012, so 6 years.
Right.
Yeah, it was about a year. I did the lessons for the first time before I started traveling.
Right. Okay.
So I took on voluntary impoverished life and as an independent inspired monk, and just started traveling following guidance in the spirit because I didn't know how to transcend the world. I just know I was called to be doing it.
And you felt that helped, not having physical possessions and traveling and having a simple
Uh,
lifestyle?
well, I know it's not required, does not require that at all. But as far as for my personal perspective, I
Right.
did find it important at the time, and that's why it helped.
Right. So it just felt like a calling, something that you had to do.
Yeah, I
Right.
definitely didn't. Now I'd say I didn't have to throw my yearbooks away and things like that, which I did. I just more
Why
so
did you
had
throw
to.
your yearbooks away?
It's like, I, well, because I thought they were something, something, and so
Right.
it was more like to learn how to mentally detach. I physically detached, so
Right.
physical detachment is not necessary, but mental detachment is. So in the same way as
But it can be
meditation.
helpful though.
Yeah, I mean,
Physical
it's
detachment.
if you're that's the
Detachment.
thing is like if you're inspired to do it, go for it.
Right.
If it motivates you, and I would say go for it and don't hesitate. That's but of course get your life worked out so that you can do it, and be you go through all sorts of things. So I was put into unusual situations physically and mentally, emotionally, all of it that I had to, and I wanted to be. I wanted to get into these weird situations with unusual people so that I had to see my mind differently. And I
Yeah.
then could approach my mind different thoughts where I did not see purity, I did not see innocence. And uh, that's what needed to be forgiven. So it was like every experience was showing me what
Right.
was in my way of transcending.
Right. Right. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, in a way, in
yeah. And you're following. That's good.
well, I'm trying my best to understand. Um, okay, I'm gonna wrap this up. Can you
Sure.
tell everyone where to find your courses?
Yeah, so openandclear.com. I just like redid it and I'm working on it still, but openandclear.com. So that's OPENANDCLEAR. So you can find my podcast there by clicking the to listen, or to learn is my academy, and to do is services and community. And so it's all available there, and you can find out like just what is inspiring. Like my next course that I'm working on is called Periodical of Allies, and so it's all about relationships, and we're getting into all different degrees of learning how to have healthy and happy relationships.
Openandclear.com,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen, David Byrne. Sorry, Devin Byrne.
Thank you.
Devin Byrne, thank you for being here.
Thank you.